Wow.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh. Wow. Yeah, I'm feeling it today. Can you feel that? Oh, shit. Yeah, we are here. We are down with the sickness. We are down back in the steam tunnels. You will hear
No
this.
way of putting it.
You will hear this 2 weeks apart, but we are doing this back-to-back, days to days, because our man Gregory is going to be taking off, sunning his buns, going wherever he's going on vacation. I should have asked him I meant to ask him before we started this recording, but I didn't get there. So, that's it. That's just how we
Ohio.
That's it. Yeah.
Sunny Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Sheboygan, Michigan.
Pittsburgh, Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
That's a Pittsfield. Woohoo! The
Fancy.
The amazing Pittsfield. Yes, we are here. It is the Steam Gentleman. I want to give a quick little acting shout out again. Maybe not the actor of our career, but I got to say, Harry Melling. Remember this name, and here's why. I was watching one of the latest Netflix. I was Netflixing and chilling, which meant I literally fell asleep while I was watching it a couple times. So that's okay. That's the Gen X version of Netflix and chill. Harry Melling played in the Netflix movie The Pale Blue Eye. He plays Edgar Allan Poe, and he does a fantastic job. Now I can't quite tell if they gave him. He looks a lot like Poe did in the daguerreotypes and in his and in the portraits. But maybe they did some prosthetics, but there was something about his performance that I really feel he got Poe, like he got the understanding, the setting. Again, none of this is spoilers, but he's at West Point, which Poe was, and just the way he just portrayed him, as the somewhat educated, maybe too sensitive, for being in West Point in the 1800s. Absolutely fantastic job. But the reason I really want to elevate his performance is him as Dudley Dursley in the Harry Potter movies. Yes, this dude who is like,
this is awkward.
Well, presents last year I got 11. That was what he'd done before, right? And
never watched those. Fair
enough. All right. Well, RaShaun, I really wish I could say you're missing a lot, but you're not. They're my wife's favorites. So, and I get into them. It's sort of like we talked about last time.
Power to you.
It's sort of like what I've talked about before, the Downton Abbey. I pretend not to like it, but I do.
It's the Friends of Fantasy genre.
That's RaShaun. That was some next level Steam Gentleman right there. I got to tell you, that was
very close, man. Every once in a while, I'm hit blackjack. Too bad you weren't bet too hard on that.
I know.
That was definitely a $5 table blackjack.
The what of fantasy? The
Friends, like the show Friends. Ross, Rachel, all that shit.
Yeah.
Remember the 90s? All right, but we'll talk more about the 90s later. But RaShaun,
go ahead.
You've got me to lower my expectations. So congratulations. But anyway, just a good watch on Netflix. It's a movie. It's not a series, so you can watch it. It's not one of the goddamn white people. What are you doing? Documentaries, which there's plenty of those out there. That's what I say. And I'm the white guy of the group. All right? I'm just like, hey, what are you doing right now? That's how I'm starting to come in. I did want to put out to the panel really briefly, just in our opening thought here for the day. We need to talk about the term basic bitch, okay? Because it's out there. It's really popular. Everybody uses it like they're not basic bitches. That's the thing, right? Like, are we really going to say that most of America really gets above the line of what is considered a basic bitch or basic bro, if you prefer, for being too offensive? I get it, but is it?
This is the question you ask after bringing up Harry Potter, one of the most milquetoast, generally accepted.
Harry Potter definitely could be the basic bitch of fantasies. I mean, you said it as Friends, which was the cleaned up version of it. I get it.
That's pretty.
But we run an explicit show here. We swear. So I was going, But
I don't know the fuck you're talking about. I've never fucking swore in my fucking life.
Exactly.
Fuck you.
But really, I just feel like there's a lot of pressure in that term, right? You're a basic bitch. Oh my God. You like your pumpkin spice lattes. But seriously, like, do most of us really?
Right? Didn't that get ugly?
Right.
I just think
What happened today, Josh? Talk to us.
everything happened today. Everything happens every day. Everything happens at once, just like the movie said. But realistically, I was pondering that. Everybody. I think it's the I'll refer to it as the Kardashian factor, right? This idea that we somehow are going to be elevated to what we see on reality TV and everything else, that we're going to rise above all that, and we're not. I mean, really, realistically, why do they talk about the 99%? Like 99% of us are basic bitches or basic bros, if you prefer. But I'll go with it. I'm a basic bitch. I like it. I'm good like that.
So I'll hop right on that since you brought it to the panel, and I'll try to be brief so I know Starchild can add his intellect towards this. But I think the biggest problem in which you're running into is very similar to many terms that get to the level of, as you're talking about, the basic bitch, is that the term has been in existence for a very long time. The only problem is, by the time it gets to certain groups of people who, let's argue, control the media, and unfortunately anti-Semites, I'm not talking about Jewish people, but there is a huge connection. By the time it gets to that, it's already well past the popularity of the actual term. It's just for the new group, and the group that's frankly controlling a lot of, let's say, mass media, it's not. And it gets used in a lexicon in a way that's like, everyone's saying it now, but the people who were saying it like 20 years ago have stopped saying it about 15 years ago because let's say they no longer got control of the term or got credit for it, which is very consistent with like 90% of the things we end up saying. Like, it's lit.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, I'm going to clarify this. You're saying basic bitch is the basic bitch of sayings now. Like, no, it's gone past that. This is the insight. This is what the Steam people tune in for, is insight like that. All right. Just to let us all know that, basic bitch is the basic bitch of terms. Okay. We're good. We're good with that. Starchild, what you got to add to that? Oh, you're on mute, my friend. Oh, it was your turn. It was your turn.
So bad you broke his mic.
There you go. Oh my God. Oh my Lord, man. RaShaun, you absolutely blew Greg so much you put him on mute. Who knew?
That's what I do.
You're good now, Greg. You were. Good. Oh. You're good, I think.
Oh my God, you just made Josh's week. Right? You've been waiting to get this moment, man.
I'm just enjoying this.
I better get my power plug before my damn laptop cuts out.
All right. What are we talking about?
Now he's back. All right. Basic bitch. That's what we're talking about. Your feelings.
The pumpkin spice of put downs.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really says basic bitch anymore. It's one of those things. I think it got taken out of the lexicon a little too soon, like hot mess, because I really think hot mess is, just kind of a great word to use for just a lot of just, shitty situations. But we'll see which, slang ends up being classic now. You know what I mean? Like, we'll see what people end up going back to. But for basic bitch, I mean, it was never really defined, right? Like what exactly is a basic bitch?
Oh, it was defined, at least in certain circles.
Maybe
talking about the people using it now, frankly.
I don't know who, fell into the category of the basic bitch. I will say that depending on who, is throwing that insult out there, might be the best thing that's been said about you in a long ass time, because people are embracing their basicness, like people are embracing their introvert. People are embracing their nerdness. People are embracing their, I'm just going to wear cotton and wear a cap today. People are embracing their basicness. I think that's going to be something that's going to be embraced in the years to come.
Gregory, as is often the case, and between the two of you, you did a wonderful segue that we couldn't have planned, but you segued that. You segued the idea of that kind of eclectic inclusiveness that was had me thinking about things today, and had me thinking about this subject that I pitched to the Steam gentlemen. All the wonderful Steam people are going to get this a little later on, but we are, as I say, we're recording back-to-back days, which is a heavy lift for us, and we're really bringing this on. So thank you. It was a fantastic segue going into what we wanted to talk about today, or what I decided we wanted to talk about today, which was
that's kind of how it works all the time, people.
I hope not, but all right, maybe it happens. Who knows? All right.
Whose name's on the Spotify? Check it.
I'll make sure. I'll go back. I'll put it in the that's on the RSS feed. I'll go and fix that. I'm fixing that right after this. Damn it. I'm fixing that right after this recording right now. Going there. But we're talking about the decade that was known as the 1990s, the decade where the Birdman peaked. Right? Let's be honest here, and peak is a real relative term. That just means a little up in the line of coolness of whatever it was. But
ironically, it was also the last decade of music where it was anti-bitch. There were literally campaigns in music, mostly in hip hop, but not exclusive, to get people to stop calling mostly black women, but women in general, bitch, which you wouldn't know. Definitely listening to anything now, but it definitely was a big thing in the 90s.
Then you go back to
it didn't work, but yeah. It did not work even a little bit.
Campaigns against verbs, against words. It's a dicey thing. Like as we went shout out to our episode a couple weeks back, the war on drugs, right? When we had that war on it didn't work.
We were just talking about Captain Planet. I mean,
true.
Yeah.
Right.
And drugs before. And look, hip hop took on a lot of battles and campaigns in the 90s, way more than we can cover in one episode. But I can say they definitely went over on a couple. Calling people a bitch, definitely went over on that. Safe sex, I'm going to say they did not land that one. Definitely nailed increase in HBCU. I want to give them a shout out for that, but definitely did not nail the war on drugs, because there was a time where they were very much anti, or at least a good part of it was anti-drugs. Did not last on that one either. So yeah, they did not come out of the 90s unscathed. They definitely lost a few battles.
We made there was a valiant effort.
Meanwhile, rock and roll is like, we don't give a shit. We're white. No one's gonna arrest us. Fucking do all the drugs we can.
Right. You don't want to search my trunk.
That's why Living Color showed up. They're like, yeah, we're following Fishbone. Fuck that. Their buses don't get pulled over.
Facts.
Jim Carrey's the only one who's going to get the big movie deals until much later with Jamie Foxx. Thank God.
Bad Brains is like, y'all on tour?
Major points. If I could assign points to us here, I would, because a Bad Brains reference is major points. So well done.
Good listening.
Good push up there. But yeah, we wanted to talk about the crazy era that was the 90s, particularly the music, because it was, I have such a soft spot for it. I was in college, so there was that. Maybe that's why. Maybe there's some nice memories attached to it. Though, goddamn, my college experience was still pretty pedestrian. So, yeah. And I finally, with this very podcast, got a chance to put some of that college education to use. So I'm glad that the debt was worth it. All right.
You basic bitch.
I am.
Basic as fuck.
Basic as fuck. Oh my God. Yeah.
Basic
I
as
am
fuck.
Definitely in it. Maybe the 90s are the basic bitch of decades. Who knows?
Oh, don't you dare.
Oh, to me. Not to me, man. To me,
they're
always going to be a special decade. But we wanted to talk a little bit about music and what it meant to us in that particular decade. 1990 to 1999. A special time in our lives and a special time in the world. God damn it. There was a lot going on, man. The Clintons were in the White House, and they decided that Sister Souljah was who they were going to wage war against. That was great. Let's not forget Tipper Gore telling us all that the naughty words were going to send us all to hell. Can't forget that.
Talking about over.
It was over. So it was going to happen. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to the Star Child to give us his 10 minutes of thoughts and on this, and set us straight on what the hell just happened in the 90s. That really did just happen. Star Child, what you got going on?
How bizarre. I mean, Yeah, it was.
Wait, we didn't even do the intros.
No, my goodness. Well, we're considering that the intros today. We're rolling. We're going, people. Go, Greg.
All right. How bizarre.
All right, cool.
Starting with New Zealand. Look at you global trotter.
I was gonna say
1997, by the way. Just gonna say that. Just gonna
how bizarre. It was a decade of weird ass singles by like the Violent Femmes, and in the afterlife, I can't remember who sang that song, but it was fucking weird. As well as
Nut Zippers. 3
Squirrel
words.
Nut Zippers. Yep,
Squirrel
thank
Nut
you.
And the song was called Hell, just so you know, and they couldn't even play it on the radio back then.
I always do forget about that weird swing period in the 90s. What the fuck was happening that decade? Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people do, and it's not totally an accident. And other legendary bands like the Butthole Surfers and Delight, and like it was a time for strange ass bands. Now, where did that come from? You got a group of teenagers that are living with not only the burden of Reaganomics, but are dealing with the burden of the failures of the love generation and just the postmodernism that was growing out of the 90s. And that's really the big thing that came out of the 90s. All of a sudden, being cynical was perfectly fine. But somewhere in that little vein of everyone being so damn ironic, I mean, just, oh my God, just the irony was just constant. And everyone just feeling so damn clever because they know who Nietzsche was. It was something that was kind of made people turn their backs on convention. And when people are turning their backs on convention, some creative shit happens. It wasn't just about, the independent film movement and the weird ass animation that was coming out at the time. Like, it was really in a lot of circles of media. So we're going to talk about music. I mentioned the weird ass singles and things that were coming out, but a big thing was movie soundtracks. Unbelievably popular at the time. Scores, all of a sudden, people were treating James Horner like Beethoven. Like, if you could sit through about a 3-minute, so all right, you might not be able to sit through all of Stravinsky, but you can damn sure sit through 3 or 4 minutes of Vangelis and Thomas Newman. Like those things, absolutely possible. The Romeo and Juliet soundtrack still blows people's minds. The Pulp Fiction soundtrack, how can we even get past the Pulp Fiction soundtrack and the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack? Sometimes the soundtrack was more popular than the movie. And that was a constant. Yeah, it was. Yeah, sometimes it definitely happened where sometimes it was like, everyone was talking about the soundtrack. People forgot about the damn movie. Like it was a classic time for that as well. Go ahead.
I was going to say Spawn. That just immediately comes to mind. Spawn,
oh, hell yes.
Spawn. Well, since we're stopping Star Child, I was going to add my 2 cents to say Hip Hop High, which was
Jason's lyric.
Way better of an album than a movie. Jason's lyric, at least that movie was good.
Actually, no, the Life soundtrack, Eddie Murphy and
dude, that movie was good though.
Yeah, it's all right. But the soundtrack,
I just talked about Can't Get Right.
A hit. That was an absolute hit. But movie soundtracks were doing great at the time. One of my favorite aspects of it was world music. World music exploded around this time, and I was really happy to see it. You had European bands and groups like Bjork and Portishead that were just bringing sounds, and people were just open all of a sudden to listening to these. And they weren't, this wasn't like British New Wave where they were just being super chic and super fashionable all the goddamn time. No, like they were honestly bringing like deep beats. Like bringing a kind of Eastern European industrial kind of rock. And yeah, Rammstein, we still love you. We still love you, Rammstein.
Oh, lost.
Yeah, it'll never go away. Speaking of weird ass singles, I mean, that was their big hit, but don't forget, Gwar was still around this time. So, I mean, it was also, they kind of started more in the 80s, but they reached their peak in the 90s. And, if it wasn't for the 90s, you wouldn't have Insane Clown Posse. You're welcome, future generations. So a big thing that was big at the time was dancehall.
Yeah, Ninja.
Dancehall. It went from Bob Marley being the only Jamaican artist anybody knew to suddenly Shabba Ranks, and boom, it just exploded. It exploded to Buju Banton. It just exploded to Barris Hammond, Luciano, a bunch of artists, all at the same time. The streets were littered with the exact same mixtapes. I swear to God, it was the exact same tapes, the exact same mixes of the exact same stuff. But we didn't care. We didn't give a shit. We ate them all up. Anything that was a reggae. People didn't really even know.
Easy.
I was kind of weird because I actually bought whole albums. I didn't buy just mixtapes. People didn't even actually know what the real songs sounded like because it was just the mixes that were so popular at the time. And that's what everyone had. So everyone was also grooving to that, but everybody was also grooving to all kinds of Latin music too. Don't forget, this was the reggaeton explosion. So reggaeton, yeah, we know it's pretty much the same beat, but nobody cares. Okay, it's 4:00 in the morning and you're having a good time. No one gives a shit. All right, around this time you had one of my favorite albums and events, and not just world history, but in world music, the Buena Vista Social Club. It was a documentary that got made into an album, which it was just this group of Cuban artists that were making amazing music, and just seeing them, because before then it was all about Gloria Estefan, right? It was all about Miami Sound Machine, and you thought that was like the be all end all of Cuban music. And then Buena Vista came together, and you were like, okay, I need to find out who Ibrahim Ferrer is, because that's amazing. That's the good shit. And that's kind of what you had the option of doing. Otherwise you were going to be stuck with Ricky Martin and J-Lo. No disrespect to Ricky Martin and J-Lo, but once you start listening to reggaeton, what was really hot at the time, and bachata, you completely forgot about what was mainstream Latin music.
Ricky Martin that
was that
90s? That was huge. Come on.
But who is confusing Ricky Martin with what you just said?
A lot of people were thinking that Ricky Martin and J-Lo, they were like the be all end all of Latin music. Well, and Desi Arnaz, but anyway, let's not forget Desi. EDM was huge at the time. CNC Music Factory, that was important. It happened. Like you weren't going to be able to make music at that time, but you also had Fatboy Slim. You had Moby. And do yourself a favor. He was late 90s, but there's a dude named Ronnie Size. Check out Ronnie Size. Do yourself a favor. EDM of that period, it was the way to go. And I can't, forget about African music, the continent. A great time for them too, because this was Baba Mal, this was Youssou N'Dour. Around this time, you finally had just a lot of that fantastic, especially Western African music. Yeah, I'd say West African music, but Lady Smith and Black Mambazo, they didn't go anywhere. Like they were still there too. But especially for those musicians, like it was really a great time, and you didn't need anybody like Paul Simon, to kind of front the band. Like you were able to just like come out and make your own music.
What if he called you Al?
What's that?
So what if he called you Al?
What the fuck's he gonna do?
Don't worry about it.
What is Paul Simon gonna do?
Call you Al.
Fuck is Paul Simon gonna do? And I mean, I can go
give
all
you 50
day
ways
with
to lose
underground hip hop. I can give all of the De La Souls and the hieroglyphics all of the time they need, but
shout out to MF Doom. Like I feel like I've touched on that 1,000 times, 1,000 other ways, but that's just like as far as world music, what was going on in mute, that's just like a touch, just like a couple of names and a touch of what was happening. To quote a character from a movie of a time period that we're talking about, which also included a soundtrack that was otherworldly. I don't know about that. I don't know about you. So hold on, let me back up. You're putting CNC Music Factory in the category of EDM. Is that what I just heard?
Oh yeah, techno, EDM. Yeah, it was electric music.
CNC Music. You know what? Hey, I'll back up. Let me go ahead and tell the listeners right now, I'm backing up because let's be clear. If we're gonna be talking about who we are as a panel, this is basically, what was that John Cusack movie where High Fidelity? Basically, if we had to break down the characters, by default, Josh is basically John Cusack for a lot of reasons, and the last one is because he's white. But Greg is definitely the Jack Black character. He is definitely the guy who has beyond a library of knowledge when it comes to music. He just listed a bunch of people, some people I had never heard of, I'm a little ashamed of, which kind of makes me that sheepish bald dude that was scared of his own shadow, which kind of sucks, but you know, in a lot of ways
we were wondering who that guy was. Yeah,
in a lot of ways that kind of scans, but anyway,
yeah, it's on brand. It's on brand. We're good.
Like, I feel like if we did have a record store, Greg would be the guy looking at someone like, you know, we don't need your business. Well, the rest of us are like, no, we do.
Get the fuck out of here.
We absolutely do. Greg's like, no, you're too dumb to be shopping here. It's like, stop doing that.
No, I would be that dude that would be like, oh, you like this? That's great. It sucks, but enjoy it.
That's the Jack Black.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. It sucks. And then on the Best Buy and shit.
Just, your daughter does not want this. That absolutely. I
had to say, a big address to coconuts.
Greg, huge love to you for bringing up the Buena Vista Social Club, the promotional company that I worked for out in LA. We tried to cut some spots for that. So I got involved in that pretty early on as a documentary. And then of course the soundtrack, which we had, and I just loved it. If you've never listened to Jorge Cachao, listen to that man. Like, he is, that is some good Cuban music. Most people who hear some Cuban music, they think about Tito Fuentes, and nothing against Tito. By all means, get your Tito on. It's just
get your Tito on.
Get you good to peel back some layers on that one.
Well, there was Ibrahim Ferrer, Amalia Mendoza, Ruben Gonzalez, a bunch of people, and actually my father is much more into Latin music than I was, but it was like the biggest thing for him because, he used to travel all over Central and South America and the Caribbean. And so he knew all of those guys. So first of all, he was just happy to see that they were alive. It's like, you weren't shot. Excellent. And then, they came to the United States and they did the movie and they did the album. Like, it was huge. Like, it was a big bonding moment because, again, like, this was my introduction to Cuban, real, proper Cuban music, and if you haven't had a proper introduction, this is the way to go.
Yeah, you have to get your proper introduction. Well, Greg, I think you touched on it and why I was thinking about it today. Exactly. It was this, I'm going to step up here for my time at the plate. It was such an amazing, eclectic mess. And I feel like, I don't know if it'll come around again. I hope it does. I didn't feel like it was there before, but there was something about when we hit that age. We had come out of the 80s, which was mostly that, there was a lot of that new wave sound, right? And a lot of synthesizers and, the introduction of the drum machine as it was going, and how things were starting to shape up, and this idea of electric music really starting to take over. And was that the right soul that we had? But then, we got grunge interjected into it all of a sudden, right? We had just the groin of music just put down in there, right? When we first heard that fuzzy guitar kick back in. But then, interestingly enough, it wasn't just, at least from my perspective, it wasn't just encouraging us to listen to rock and roll again. It was encouraging us, like you said, to listen to everything. It was like, now is the time. You've got all these CDs. You had Tower Records, which I got to say, shout out to Tower Records and our local equivalent here. We're up here in Boston on the East Coast. We had Newberry Comics. Same kind of idea, just tons and tons of CDs and tons of different genres and different ideas. So it was listened to it all. I got introduced to Zydeco music, right? These Cajun rhythms and people standing up there and singing with accordions. I almost want to call it squeeze box, but also, the more colloquial name. So suddenly everything is opened up to you. When I was in college, I hosted. This is where you get this smooth DJ voice. I hosted the jazz lunch, right? So there was all about jazz, trying to open up and open up into all categories of it. When Miles Davis goes into his fusion section, right, and bitches brew, since that's the theme of the day. We're going there. Also guys like Jaco Pastores. I was a big bass guy, so I like Charles Mingus, I like Jaco Pastores, I like just bouncing around. But that was the idea, was like, go on out, sample all this. Like, you have so much to listen to, why would you want to? And I felt like coming out of the 80s, and maybe it was just the school experience and everything, so much was there trying to pin you down and trying to put you into this one category. And then suddenly the 90s hit, and we didn't have a category. It was all over the goddamn place. People forget Dave Matthews got big in the 90s. And Dave Matthews, I think of my father shaking his head. Dave Matthews was just folk, man. Like, it was a slightly, more up-tempo folk, but he had a banjo player in there, which also then, if you get into that bounced you off to Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. All right. If you've never heard Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, give that shit a listen. Greg touched on it. The dance hall, Bujabantan and Shabba Ranks. Totally fell in love with them in that period of time. It was just.
I'm bringing up Mad Lion, and it's hurting me.
Yeah. All right. Well, you get your 10 minutes. It's okay. You get your 10. I'll take.
I ain't talking about dance hall.
I'll take my 10. But it was so much out there and so much at our feet. I will say, I can a couple of small notes. Firstly, I can probably tell you every chart hit that happened in the year 1997. Why 1997? Well, that was the year I moved out to LA. It was a tough time in my life. There was a lot going on. I had a job. I've talked about it before on the show. That is now been replaced by the very iPhone that I keep time on for us all, and that we all communicate on every day. I had a job where I had to drive the streets of LA with a giant ass book of maps, people, actual physical maps, drawings and representations of the streets of Los Angeles, called the Thomas's Guide. There's a certain generation that knows exactly what I'm talking about. There was no GPS. You didn't have any of that. And by the way, I had a CD changer in the back that eventually got stolen when the car got stolen. But
you had it in the back? Big baller. Okay. 97 in the back.
When it came to my music, man, I had the 6-disc CD changer in the back.
Oh shit.
Yeah. That sucker got changed.
These people don't understand what kind of ball we're talking about.
Oh man, it was Alpine too, by the way. Big ballin'.
God damn.
Bigger ballin' than the car, by the way.
There are probably more finks out there.
Hey, you would think, but somehow I still spotted that. But it had so so with that, I was
filled with Rush.
I had all kinds of CDs going, and I had the radio, which at the time was K-Rock, which was probably still out there, but that was the station that if you wanted to make it on, you had to get on there. It started with the morning show, a typical morning show with these two guys named Kevin and Bean. They finally just went off the air a couple of years ago. So I can tell you all of the chart hits from that time, which included, by the way, guys like Counting Crows.
That is impressive.
Which does get forgotten about. Long December, man. That
I was just about to say.
It still brings a tear to my eye every time I hear that song. Live, let's not forget about them. They were out there kind of doing their thing. It was that sensitive rock.
Every time lightning crashes.
It had that, it had that feel into it. It had stuff going on, and they had other tunes going out into it. But what I think is my favorite little anecdote about the era is how we all, or how so many people misinterpreted some of the greatest hits on that time. For example, 1997's Semi-Charmed Kind of Life.
Ooh.
Right? What a
Well
tune.
done.
I actually remember working for that same company that I was running the streets on back and forth, bringing videotapes back and forth to the studio so they could look at their various cuts of what they had. I remember them using Semi Charm Kind of Life they were proposing it for a Disney trailer, right? It was a Winnie the Pooh video release, Winnie the Pooh. And I was the one in the room going, that song's about crystal meth, just so we're all clear. Right?
It's transpotting if it was a song.
All right, it was exactly. They're like, shut the fuck up. You're 22. Get the fuck out of the room, which I probably would have said to myself now too, as well. But sure enough, it was people were really not hearing. Like maybe we had liner notes back then. You could look at the lyrics, you could read them, and I read them. And he says, "Do a crystal meth." He says it right there. It's not that hard to find, but in fact, it's about his time just high as balls on crystal meth. Somehow I made it through the 90s not doing meth or Molly. I have no idea how I did that, but nevertheless,
I'm 1 for 2.
a story for another time.
Well done.
I really hope it was the Molly, dude. As
Time will tell.
So we had that going on, and it brings me to my final story of that decade of just, as I say, this mishmash of craziness, this total music. I dated a woman who was a nice woman. We ended up parting on good enough terms, which you'll see later on. Firstly, she was obsessed with Titanic, which, let's not forget, in the 90s, we all discovered Celine Dion, whether we
speaking of soundtracks, yeah,
or not. But speaking of soundtracks, right, that was huge. And to be honest, Celine Dion was holding her own on the charts prior to that. She'd had some hits before that.
Thank you.
People knew. And the Titanic just launched it up to the stratosphere. It just brought it to that proverbial next level. But I was on good enough terms of this one that I actually got.
Is that where the CD player went?
Yeah, that's where maybe that's who knows. A lot of things went out of that car. But I was on good enough terms that I actually got invited to this woman's wedding, and so did some others. So did a soap opera star, a couple of things. But she was telling me that she wanted her first dance at her wedding to be to the song "Slide" by the Goo Goo Dolls. Right. All right. Firstly, not a very danceable tune. Let's just go from there. I mean, a nice tune. I still like it. When it comes on, I'm not turning the radio off.
I have a feeling rhythm wasn't a big concern in this group.
Not so much. You can imagine the pallor, if you will, of this wedding. So, okay, it was what it was. Happened here back in Mass, but all right. However, there was that really, really awkward moment when I just looked her straight in the eyes and I said, that song's about an abortion, right? So a bold choice for your first dance, but hey, you go with that. As a matter of fact, it did in fact get changed to something I can't even really remember, of course, right? Because
I think it was really leaned into abortion.
That was just.
How about this one?
How about this one? I guess I was the Adam ruins everything before Adam ruins everything.
Before Adam ruined everything.
You're the Bagger Vance before Bagger Vance.
Bagger Vance before Bagger Vance. And he needed Bagger Vance to get me out of that. Nevertheless, here I was just absolutely raining all over that parade. But yeah, I'm still going to stand by the suggestion that if you're going to have a first dance at your wedding, don't do it to a song about abortion. That's just me, that's my taste. That's just my 2 cents worth, and just a thought, as the man once said. I will say at my wedding, it was don't know much about history by this. So I thought that was, a little more apropos.
Well, are you done?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay. I could tell you why I'm not Jack Black. And I can tell you about, people did not care what songs meant because I remember there's this woman, she was a sex worker and she loved this song by the Cranberries. And she used to belt it out. Like I'm talking about, like she was at that time about 50 years old.
Bro, what is the story?
No one gave a damn, and we could live. See life as fun and take it if we can. I can't remember, but it was that song. And she absolutely loved this song, and she would belt it out. And she's thinking to herself that this song is about, like, people that have deserted her in her life. And I'm thinking to myself, it's not what the song is about, but it doesn't matter because to this absolutely just woman that life has kicked the shit out of, this song is resonating in a way that has never resonated to anyone else who probably does understand what the song is actually about. And that, you know what, some art is about that intimate personal experience, you know what I mean? And you are having it with yourself and by yourself. And one of the best examples is Bob Dylan. Everybody must get stoned. Everybody thinks that song is about getting high. And he kind of leaned into it because, you know what? Yeah, people are having a good time. They love singing that shit and belting it out loud. Yeah, it even if it's a popular song, it's still about you and your experience with your music.
There's a lot of truth to that. And I'll admit, certainly in the 90s, I was that guy who spoke up too much. But, that goes to me being.
I didn't give a shit. Yeah, whatever you want to think this song is about, you go ahead and shake your ass. You go ahead and say OPP stands for whatever you want it to be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, this isn't what I wasn't going to cover this part because there's so much to cover in the 90s, but it does go along with what we've been talking about the last couple of minutes. There were so many moments where there were songs that had nothing to do or should not ever be introduced in the crowd that in which it was being played for. Yet it was being received in a way that people are trying to make it the new YMCA. I did the walk for hunger one time with my mom, and coming into the 18th mile, frankly, everyone was delirious at that point. But coming into that moment, they were playing OPP over the loudspeaker for the whole crowd, and everyone was going crazy. And I'm watching individuals my mom's age, basically her demographic. So I'm watching a bunch of 40-plus-year-old women across the board of all stripes, mostly white. I'm in Boston, but of all stripes, just waving their hands and shouting, yeah, you know me. And I'm looking at them like, what the fuck is happening here? Do you guys understand what you're saying? It's not that hard. They're not burying the lyrics. They're not even trying to use innuendo. Have you listened to any of this? Why are we doing this? And
I just want to add that OPP, to me, will always stand for Ontario Provincial Police, because every time I see one of those cars go by with, in fact, giant capital O, period, capital P, period, capital P, that's all I can ever think of. But continue, please.
There's a lot of different examples that we can use from that, because frankly, the 90s were so many different things. Like many things that we talk about, perspective is a very important thing. I think me being the youngest of the three, my perspective is both uniquely in tune with my fellow esteemed gentlemen and also somewhat out of whack. There are things that I find the 90s, first of all, like I said, there's so many different things that I could focus on in the 90s. It's overwhelming. We talk in a lot of different ways about every decade. Frankly, there's one or two sort of like eras in a decade that defines the music, and at least in the way we look at it historically. So we can look at sort of the British invasion coming out of the 60s. We can look at Motown of the, also 60s and 70s. We can look at the rise of, teeny bop, things like all these weird sort of phases can be attached to a decade in the sense that it almost becomes prevailing era or sort of understanding what the musical force was during that decade. The 80s, yeah, Josh nailed a lot of what comes to it. Frankly, for me, I would only say that you only missed on the saxophone and the drum machine because it felt like, especially coming out of the 80s, you didn't have a song or you didn't have a soundtrack complete for an action movie unless you had some saxophone out of nowhere, just fucking out of nowhere, just random scene in a city street or something. You'll see some random chains, probably it's always wet for whatever reason. It was always wet. And then boom, saxophone.
Makes the lights shimmer. I can tell you
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And then boom, saxophone out of nowhere. Just all right, cool. And then normally some drum machine and blah blah blah. So yeah, the 80s is a little bit of that, but in a lot of ways, the 80s had a lot of weird, crazy things too. To the point of what we're all talking about, the 90s was just out of fucking control. The 90s was literally, I want all the viewers to close their eyes. Hopefully you've had somewhat of a decent life to get to where I'm talking about. And if not, I don't know, go out more, take some chances. Don't even meet people. Just fucking put yourself in some weird spots and just call it a day. Matt, take yourself, everyone, close your eyes, take yourself back to that party. Not maybe the best party you've ever been, but that party, the party where you say to a certain group of friends, they don't even have to hear the rest of you, what you have to say, because it was so out of control, so unkept, so to speak, that everyone had a different experience in one house, right? It's that party where every room, there was almost something different going on, something crazy, something to the point where you both felt oddly safe, oddly comfortable, but also oddly in need of an adult, no matter what age you were. It was always that weird moment of like, I feel like there needs to be an authority of some sort of level higher than what's in this room, because where we're going with this situation is out of control. And that was the 90s. It's impossible to look back at the 90s and define it to one era or genre. A lot of people, you'll listen to certain groups and say, well, it's a grunge era. That's funny, because at the same time it was a grunge era, it was also the rise of a lot of different hip-hop eras. That's even before we get to the gangster hip-hop era, which was also a prevailing thing, which we also will then skip over the unity hip-hop and the backpack hip-hop. We're also going to skip over some of the hardcore rock that was coming out. We're going to skip over some of the metal that came out in the 90s. There's so many different things. I think also some of the coolest things about the 90s, because one of the things that Josh talked about that sort of controlled this moment in a lot of different ways was because the radio controlled so much of what we heard, and all these different groups, these disparate musical groups of all different stripes were fighting to get onto these radio stations. And then in a lot of ways, it creates these weird pocketed communities where we've already talked about something. We've talked about the early hip hop community in a lot of different cities throughout the United States that birthed some of the people that we hear now. I can point out to you that a lot of the rappers you may like now started by probably either producing or creating beats for people because they were just hanging out in the back of some of the biggest stars out there. I've already talked about how one of the coolest things I can think about in the 90s was in Seattle, you had basically Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, and a bunch of other people hanging out like it was no thing, and also Nirvana. I mean, shout out to my mom and my parents because they listen and let me listen to shit over and over and over, and they didn't kill me because I probably would have killed me if I did. Nirvana was one. We talked about soundtracks. Y'all didn't bring up Crooklyn. That one, I got so much burn out of that. Thankfully, that was a little bit more my mom's line thinking with music, so she wasn't too bad. But my mom was also very, very too, so she didn't really give a shit that much. It was cool. Boogie Nights, we didn't bring that up. There's a lot of different soundtracks. But speaking of soundtracks, because soundtracks was definitely part of the situation and where I'm going to focus for the rest of my time, because like I said, I'll continue to say, and I'll say for like even now as I'm thinking of it, I'm getting overwhelmed because it was so crazy. It was oddly unifying. That was the other thing about the 90s. It was oddly unifying because our choices were controlled so hard, and because the streams, the avenues of being able to get people to listen to your music was so basically streamlined, not for a good reason, but it just happened that way and people controlled it that way. A lot of what we end up hearing, we heard it together. So what I was hearing as a 12-year-old, Josh was hearing as like the 42-year-old that he is, like we were all hearing things at the same time, whether we wanted to or not. But I'm going to focus on something that fucking pissed me the hell off. And look, I know we're trying to get ad dollars, so that last phrase probably wasn't helping anyone, but whatever. Fuck me. I'm not going to make any money anyway. So I'm going to take you back to 1992. There's a little plucky, spirited movie that came out into the movie theaters. It was birthed from a skit from a somewhat popular TV show that comes on Saturday night. And this movie launched or relaunched a group that people my parents' age, and because I'm so young, even some of my siblings, they're already doing good enough. Not because they weren't good, but this group came up during a time where there was a bunch of good bands. So they were appreciated, but also forgotten like a lot of bands are, because that's what happens when you have a lot of great music. I would argue to us old heads, there's some 10 or 12-year-olds talking about the music scene right now and how great it is, blah, 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 18-year-olds, whatever. So this movie was Wayne's World. The song was Bohemian Rhapsody. I don't have a problem with that song. I fucking love that song. I will belt it every single time I can within reason. It obviously rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Now, why did that piss me off? And I'm talking about I don't hate that song. I have a lot of fond memories of that song. There are moments, because I was, of the age where we would walk into a classroom, someone would start singing, and then boom, it's chorus line. Like, it was always fun when that song came out. Why? Because what happened after for my age group became insufferable. So then, because of Queen, people started to focus more on other British bands. And for some goddamn reason, now you got me pissed, because I'm thinking about it. I had to live through this bullshit. We already talked about Dave Matthews. I ain't got time to talk about the people moving to that fucking stratosphere and how fucking out of whack they were. It's like, oh, really? You're a hippie? All right, cool.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm listening to people my age, 15, 16, 17, talking about they don't make music like they used to. And who are they talking about they used to? The Beatles, the Doors, all these fucking groups I'm looking at. You weren't even fucking near to be conception when these groups are coming around. I get why I was upset, and I think a lot of people listening to this would be upset too. And that's why, sadly, I think about when the 90s come up. We should have music appreciation for other eras and genres. I hope that we get back to the 90s so I can give you more examples of how fucking cool the 90s were, because it was out of control. It was that party that every single room was something different, and you're happy to make it out alive, but you also were upset to be in that level of danger. It was just that much fun from the 90s. But yeah, there was that weird fucking period where people were oddly insufferable for music they had no connection to, and acted like this is the worst part, acted like they knew why it was better. They would just literally say shit that, like, I'm like, you barely fucking made out of music in 8th grade 2 years ago, and you're gonna tell me how the acoustics was better? Oh, and don't even get me started on the weird fucking record vinyl chasing that started happening towards the end of the 90s.
Well, we've just gotten our CD players, as I mentioned, in the back of my car there, and then everyone was like, "Hell, the vinyl's better," right? It was all that was going on. Erudite motherfuckers coming all out and just saying, exactly, you nailed it. Suddenly it was, well, they don't record like they used to, and you're like, you were born in 1978. Shut the fuck up. You didn't even know what it used to be until 2 years ago when you discovered it. I just wanted to jump in here, because you sparked you sparked one of the fondest memories from the 1990s for me when you were talking about the party. When you talk about that. Mm-hmm. That was the and I'm sorry for for those of you who know me now, and some of the moms who know me on the playground who will listen to this. That was the chocolate sauce wrestling party that happened in my apartment on LA. Put on, no less, one of my roommates who couldn't get a job at that point in time, and his mom was paying his rent, comes on with this giant inflatable pool. I mean, it was a large inflatable pool that took up the majority of our living room, and said, we're gonna end up, this was at our parties. We threw some good parties back then. I say they threw some good. I rode the coattails, but I will totally own that. But he said, we're gonna set this up in our bedroom, and we're gonna have a couple women wrestle in this. As a matter of fact, actually, one of my other roommates married one of the women who ended up wrestling that night. That was and her moniker was Doobie. So you can go with that what you will. But that party was so legendary. Firstly, my friend DJ Rob Schlegel showed up with all of his vinyl.
Shout out to the Schlegels.
Shout out to DJ Rob Schlegel, who was everything that you would think from that name. Okay, he was about 6'1", skinny as a rail. Very Jewish, and yeah, absolutely rocked that fucking party. Him and like, the door kicked open. his friends started walking in with the milk crates of vinyl and looking it out and casing the joint out and fucking set that shit up. And they spun. They would like take their turn spinning all night. Party was off the goddamn chain, so much so that I walked into work the next day because of that, because Rob and I worked together. And my boss was like, what was going on with that party? I heard with women wrestling and chocolate sauce. This guy was my age at that time. He was in his 30s and his 40s. Who knew, man? Who knew? But thank you for bringing that memory back up to the surface.
I'm with you. I'm a firm believer. I know I got this from my dad, who used to, this is how I was raised, individuals. Imagine having your dad look at you and be like, you don't want to die without scars or regrets. I'm like, what the fuck? I am 7. So like, I feel bad if you've never had the experience of either waking up from throwing a party in your own house, somewhere in your house, and looking around and asking a roommate or a friend like what exactly happened last night, or frankly waking up somewhere random with your clothes on but looking over at someone and be like, I have zero clue what happened the last 8 hours, and your friend looks at you like, yeah, good luck, because like, no chance I have it either. And the funny part with there's that tick. As we brought up soundtracks from the 90s, and as I continue to stress, because it's so like I feel personally upset that I can't cover as much as I want about the 90s. We can spend weeks talking about the 90s, just the music. What kills me also that we kind of skip over, glaze over, is because the 90s also include the rise of R&B. I literally was just watching someone talk about how Josie at the end of the song had one of the best ad-libs ever. And I'm sitting there watching it and I'm like, was it an ad-lib or was it just fucking Josie? Because that's all Josie did, like right there. But because of the rise of the hip-hop, aren't whatchamacallit, Boys and Men, It's So Hard.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a cover from the Beatles. No, right? This is such a circular fucking world. Take that, flat earthers. It became the go-to song to make someone cry at a funeral scene in like all the movies and TV shows that, you know, had black people at least, but still it's like you knew where it was going. You even have to know what song was coming next. Like, oh, we got a funeral. Is it a young black kid? Yeah, we're going Boys and Men. It's So Hard.
Bing, right there, and just nailing it, man. You got it. Yeah, Martin had Gina back then. That was the age of Martin and Gina. You and me forever, Gina. Right? That was going down. Yeah, man. You're bringing up all these. The other party memory I had was I had a bad sinus infection, and I got a prescription for what I did not realize was Pseudoephedrine. So I closed the party down because I was on meth. I didn't even know it. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. And I was the last man standing. And I am never the last man standing. Okay. So
you're just one chance explosion away from making it crystal.
That was the 90s, people. If you could not encapsulate anything else, oh, you got a really stuffed up nose and you got some kind of nasty sinus infection, here, have some fucking meth and go with your bad self, right? By the way, here's the side effects, but I didn't read it till the day after. Not like the doctor warned you of the side effects. It was just, just take this, you'll feel better. Yeah, fuck yeah, I did. All night long. A quick shout out to the Good Will Hunting soundtrack, somewhat underrated in that particular time. Yeah. And I still a lot there. Elliott Smith, man, it's there's a lot. It was the 90s, man. It was anything went. But
I don't know, man. I mean,
it's come down. It's come down. We as I said, we're doing that back-to-back recording, and Greg had to jet to take care of his sick wife, so it's the last man. And it's RaShaun, it's the 3 of clubs that I stand in, and I'm always going to send him off slightly agitated, which is sort of my goal in life, is to throw that out into it so he can sit and stew on that till he next sees me. But RaShaun, man, you nailed it, dude. You absolutely
do not feel that way. I feel like I rambled and touched about 10% of all the things I wanted to talk about, which was limited to begin with.
You got the spirit of the 90s, man. You got exactly what I thought.
Random as fuck.
Exactly.
Totally come out of nowhere. We didn't even talk about the random ass, like, heights of different types of music. I mean, we brought up like the big band swing.
The swing. Oh yeah.
Swing and big band.
There. Oh
Because don't
yeah.
forget we had big band moment. That was weird as
We
shit.
could
I mean,
do extra episodes on it.
there's Atlantis, Morset, Rain. We all just skip over. I mean, we're not even touching on the bands that started in '99 that really didn't have an anchor. So by the time they hit 2000, people confuse them for being in 2000, but really it's just.
We can even, we didn't even touch on Bare Naked Ladies rapping at one point. Right? Their biggest hit was the dude rapping up there and making it.
Someone on Twitter asked what's the hardest whatchamacallit when you go singing. What the hell?
Acapella or so? I don't know.
No, karaoke. What's the hardest karaoke song for the Bare Naked Ladies? Or what's the hardest karaoke song? I'm like, Bare Naked Ladies got that cornered because the hardest and easiest song was the tweet. Now I'm thinking they got cornered because on one side you got 1 week, and on the other side, one of my favorites, which always throws Sarah off when it comes on, and I'm singing it word for word, is Brian Wilson.
Oh, hey.
Also, last quick story, because I know we're cutting out and this is like super bonus time. You might as well just cut this out and make it something different. But also because of the 90s and the way things had to come together and why everything was so tunneled and blah, blah, blah. And because of my age and when I came up and the sports I played, we made a lot of highlight films. And highlight films is basically meant we took a lot of our best plays, which were my team, we didn't have a lot, so wasn't a lot to work with. And then we put music over it, which normally was super awkward because then you get like freaking what's that Rob Zombie song, some 2000?
More Human Than Human, or was that the one you're thinking about?
I forgot what the hell it's called. Awesome song, kicks ass. I probably only know it because I played sports, and sometimes you don't get to control the radio in the locker room. Awesome, but it also starts with a sex scene. So kind of hard when you're playing that with your parents in the background at a banquet, but also because I grew up in Framingham and there's a lot of Italian Irish mixes. If you're Italian Irish, you're Italian Jewish. It's just, that's how it was. A lot of YouTube. So Sunday Bloody Sunday comes on. It's the show Sarah and I are watching, and out of nowhere, I am fucking belting each line. Sarah's looking at me like, I'm not even gonna ask why you fucking know that. I'm just asking, why do you actually like it? I'm like, come on, it's about the struggle. I'm with my people.
Exactly. You're all in there.
The struggle is real for all people. Let's get together.
We
music from the 90s.
That's it. Music from the 90s. Full circle. Love it. Bringing it back together. All right, I'm going to bring it back together.
Like Public Enemy and REM, or KRS-One and REM.
As you and I are just standing here as the last man standing. RaShaun, I'll give you the outro. I'll give you your outro. What you got going on for the rest of the week here at 3 of Clubs?
Similar to yesterday, I have no fucking clue and will not know. I'm just trying to make it to the weekend so I can drink myself to oblivion. And to be topical, I would like to end it by once again serenading our listeners and with a little hola, hola, eh, hola, hola, eh, rolling, kid play now, rolling, kid play. There's only one house party. You hear me, LeBron? There's only one house party. Y'all need to leave shit alone. Make your own shit.
I'm with you on that. I texted.
Actually, I heard the new house party is actually pretty fun and nice and cool. So good job, LeBron.
LeBron, nice job. You helped.
I love you, LeBron.
But you were like a child during that time, so it hurts us a little bit, but we get it. Good for you for keeping. I was
10.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he was an infant at that point. But all right, one random conglomeration I'm still going to remind you of. Follow us on the socials. We are the Steam Gentleman Podcast on Facebook. We are Do You Even Steam Bro on Instagram. And we are, if you want to send us a message, doevensteambro@gmail.com. Please reach out to us. I'm seeing a lot of you Steam people downloading this stuff. We're loving it. We want to keep this growing. We want to keep that Steam cloud just growing and just coming on. Please download, please tell your friends to listen, and go on over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, rate and review us, help us chart, man. That's it. We're just like another indie band here. We just happen to want to sell dick pills. I mean, that's all. It's the American dream, or mattresses, which
not exclusively. I mean, I'm down
we're
for.
open. We are open. Yes, absolutely.
I'm down for selling brain pills. Look, whatever little change Elon wants to, or sorry, L now wants to break off for us, and yeah,
I mean,
I'm cool with it. Shit, I'll sell a pillow.
Yeah, there you go.
You got some pillows? I'll take care of that.
We'll do that, Mike. Come on over, talk to us. It's all good.
Are you traveling to DC?
Yes.
You need a pillow.
You need a pillow, right? For a variety of reasons. But we thank you so much for coming on out here. Greg sends his best, as I say, as he's taking care of his ailing wife at the moment. So he's a good man. You know that. And we know that, he's going to send you nothing but love there. He's the star child. He's the coolest of us all. So, but until next time, this is Josh the Birdman saying, keep your heat up and keep your head of steam on.